Good evening. Welcome all. Welcome to the May 14th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you've joined us tonight. If you're watching at home, we're glad you've joined us there as well. As is our tradition, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose, Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Good to see everybody. Greg has another obligation tonight, so we're missing him. Item 3 on the agenda tonight are proclamations, opportunity for myself and the village to acknowledge and recognize certain either individuals or events or occurrences in the community that we think are important to highlight. So we have 3 this evening. We'll start with, the first is National Bike Month. National Bike Month was established in 1956 and serves as an annual opportunity to showcase the many benefits of bicycling and to encourage more folks to giving biking a try. Whereas Downers Grove Bicycle Club works year-round promoting the joys and benefits of bicycling in Downers Grove and throughout the area. And whereas the Downers Grove Bike Club, the American League of Bicyclists, schools, park and recreation districts, public health officials, hospitals, companies, and other civic groups promote bicycling, improving public awareness of safe bicycle operation, reducing collisions, injuries, and fatalities, improving the health and safety of everyone. Whereas throughout the month of May, residents of Downers Grove are invited to join in Bike to Work Week, May 13th through 19th. The Downers Grove Bicycle Club's participation in the annual Ride of Silence on May 15th, honoring cyclists injured or killed while riding, and Bike to Work Day on Friday, May 17th. Whereas Downers Grove's quiet streets attract bicyclists each year, providing an economical, healthy, and convenient and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent tool for recreation, exploration, and enjoyment of Downers Grove's beauty. Whereas cycling's low-impact form of exercise can help protect riders from stroke, heart attack, depression, diabetes, obesity, and arthritis. Whereas creating a bicycling-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and the quality of life, to boost community spirit, to improve traffic safety, reduce pollution and congestion, and growing the economy of Downers Grove. Now therefore I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim May 2024 as National Bike Month in the Village of Downers Grove, and I urge all residents to join in seeking opportunities to ride and to enjoy this special observance of biking in our community. Dated this 14th of May 2024, Downers Grove, Illinois. Do we have anybody from the Bike Club here this evening? Let's come on down and accept this proclamation. There's a speech and a quiz later.
It's more than just accepted.
Oh, sure.
Excellent. All right.
Next up on the list is Police Week. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. Whereas the members of the Downers Grove Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of residents, businesses, and guests in Downers Grove. Whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the challenges, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of the Downers Grove Police Department recognize their duty to serve by safeguarding life, liberty, and property, by protecting against violence and disorder, protecting the innocent against deception, and the weak against oppression and intimidation. Whereas since the first recorded death of a law enforcement officer in 1786, over 26,000 law enforcement officers, including Downers Grove's own Richard Barth in 1974, have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Whereas the Downers Grove Police Department unceasingly provides a vital public service which every member of our community counts on daily. Whereas the Downers Grove Police Department has been and remains a recognized leader in modern, efficient, effective, and empathetic policing. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, call upon all citizens of Downers Grove and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 12th through 18th, 2024 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all our people may join in commemorating police officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Dated this 14th of May, 2024, Downers Grove, Illinois. We've got some of our team members here. We'd like you guys to come down and receive this proclamation. One more proclamation this evening. 2024 Historian of the Year, Jim Toth. Whereas Jim Toth is being presented with the 2024 Downers Grove Historical Society's Historian of the Year, which was established in 2013 to honor those who significantly promoted and preserved Downers Grove history. Whereas Jim Toth began his journey down the path of music and theater during his high school years, which led him to the renowned stages of improvisational theater, in Chicago. This paved the way for Jim to assume an on-air role and as an executive producer for The Kevin Matthews Show. He then landed jobs as a content developer for Buena Vista Television, then a creative leader in the ARC Worldwide, Leo Burnett, and eventually as a partner in VSA Partners. And whereas more recently, Jim started his own business, Node Films, at which time Jim began to donate countless hours of his time and energies to create a series of documentaries focusing on different aspects of Downers Grove history. A few of those documentaries include History Happens Here, capturing the story of the Johnson family, the Tivoli Theater, and classic cinemas. The Mokel family, capturing the nuances of conversations between lifelong partners like John and Doris Mokel. And the Downers Grove Main Street Cemetery, a documentary about one of the few cemeteries in the country that remains in a downtown business district. Whereas Jim Toth lives in Downers Grove with his fiancée and 2 children and works as the director of marketing for Classic Cinemas Company. Whereas Jim Toth plans to continue his volunteer work with the Historical Society. Whereas the Downers Grove Historical Society honored Jim Toth on Wednesday, May 1st at their annual Tivoli Theater event. The celebration was followed by a premiere showing of his most recent film, the 1846 Blodgett House, which tells the story of the Blodgett family, their home, and the Underground Railroad in Downers Grove. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the week of May 12th through 18th, 2024 as Jim Toth Week in the Village of Downers Grove, and I thank Mr. Toth for sharing his talent, passion, time, and effort to preserve the history of our village. Dated this 14th day of May, 2024, Downers Grove, Illinois. Jim?
I can park anywhere I want for the next 6 days.
Okay, we will continue with our agenda. Item 4, minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion concerning previous minutes?
Mayor, I move to adopt the May 7th, 2024 Village Council meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions concerning those minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion concerning executive session minutes?
Mayor, I move to adopt the May 7th, 2024 executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
Any comments or questions on those minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously as well. Item 8, public comments portion of our meeting. This is the portion of our meeting where we take public comment on items which are not on tonight's agenda. A full house. Some of you have heard this before, but we'll do it again for those that might be new. A few rules and guidelines for how we try and run this portion of our meeting. At several points during this meeting, there will be opportunities for public comment. We're just about at one of those. This public comment portion are important and valued parts of every council meeting. We have provisions for this public comment at each active and first reading agenda items also, which are coming up a little bit later in the meeting. There's an additional opportunity for input not specific to active or first reading agendas right now under the public comments portion. While council sessions are not open debates, those that follow our meetings will recognize that this council often allows extended commentary and input and seldom, if ever, cuts anyone off. Beyond tonight's meeting, there are a variety of additional opportunities to engage council members, including our e-remarks system, the CRC system, coffee with the council, direct email, or by phone. And every one of your council members spends time in person off this dais making themselves available for residents and businesses across the community. Those one-on-one conversations are often the most valuable. I repeat that often in these meetings because they really are. This forum is not great for public dialogue. It's interesting to hear comments, but it's not a great dialogue spot. So please engage your council one-on-one. Your council is listening, taking notes, and considering what is said. And please know that often some time is needed to reflect on the comments presented to us tonight. If you plan to speak, please keep the following in mind when you come to the podium. Please state your name for the record. Address your comments to me as chair of the meeting. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Avoid repeating what others have already said. Please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject, and remember that comments are most effective when they focus on subjects within the scope of Downers Grove village governments. So with that, public comments on items not on tonight's agenda, please come on down to the podium.
Good evening. Laura Temple. I've been a resident almost 30 years now. I just have a couple of comments tonight. First, as always, I'd like to thank the folks who do the hard work of planning and planting the flowers and other landscaping around town. It's always beautiful, and I appreciate what it adds to our village. So pass along, please, a big thank you to all those folks. Second, regarding the work you are doing to find a new trustee for the library board. The absolute baseline for a trustee of any organization is that they have to believe in the fundamental purpose and mission and values of that organization. It doesn't mean that they can't challenge priorities and have differences of opinion, and it doesn't even mean that mission details can't change over time. But PADS wouldn't have board members who don't believe in their mission of ending homelessness, and a church doesn't have board members that don't believe in their mission. A trustee is not a leader of the opposition. Trustees don't have to agree on everything, except they have to agree that it is their duty to support the institution in its basic functioning and to work to make it the best it can be. I hope you have several excellent candidates to choose from, and I hope you will consider those who promise to behave and engage civilly and professionally with their fellow trustees, and at a bare minimum, have full respect for and understanding of the library as a public institution that serves the needs of the public broadly and that is part of the heart and soul of our Downers Grove community. I thank you for your thoughtfulness as you work to fill this important position.
Good evening. Warner Kiunkin. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. Mayor Barnett, commissioners, and village staff. I've now lived in Downers Grove for about 6 years, and Downers Grove is my home. But what makes a home? It's the diversity of its members. There are young and old living under the same roof. There are people who are healthy and not so healthy. There are mixed marriages of various faiths, races, and national origin, and some homes experience mental illness, substance abuse, poverty, domestic violence, and the like. In Downers Grove, the village has been discussing various building projects. These are brick and mortar constructions, but a house does not make a home. Further, it has been said that a house divided cannot stand. In the past year and a half, our home has been under attack by internal and external groups. Last week, we learned of threats to a commissioner. These threats have also focused on the library, which is a very diverse home to a number of individuals and children of various faiths, races, socioeconomic status, and abilities. And the library is a very welcoming place. So I ask my question to the council. What are we doing as a community to make people feel at home? How can people get involved? How are we supporting people of all ages who feel threatened? How are we reaching out to certain cultures to welcome them home? In the next few weeks, we will be celebrating Juneteenth, which is a national holiday, and it's the African American Day of Independence. It's very meaningful to the African American community. What are we doing as a village to acknowledge the holidays of Asians, African Americans, or Hispanic neighbors? Will we have a proclamation from the council based on reaching out to these various groups? This will welcome all nationalities and races home to Downers Grove. How are we welcoming the persons who are in need or who have certain disabilities? For our graduates from college, are we a welcoming community when we don't offer them affordable housing because they will be getting their first jobs and can't maybe afford some of the homes? And lastly, what is our message to the persons or groups that want to divide our home? All persons should be welcome and feel safe in a community. And I hope that we as a community will discuss this and that we will welcome all people to our home in Downers Grove. Thank you.
Any others on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we will continue then with our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The two passes unanimously. Item 7 is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we have items which we plan to take action on tonight. These are items which have been discussed at least once before, sometimes many times before. Is there a motion concerning a special use ordinance?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use for 5133 Main Street to permit multifamily units on the second floor and a parking variation as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments on this agenda item? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a rezoning ordinance?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 4241 Florence Avenue as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Two passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a special use ordinance?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use to permit an automobile dealership and construct an accessory structure before the principal structure is established at 4241 Florence Avenue as presented.
Second.
Any audience questions on this item? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Two passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a amended zoning ordinance?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois to designate the property at 310 to 330 Ogden Avenue and 4241 Florence Avenue as Planned Unit Development Number 68. 310 to 330 Ogden Planned Unit Development as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a rezoning on Ogden Avenue?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 310 to 330 Ogden Avenue and 4241 Florence Avenue, 310 to 330 Ogden Planned Unit Development as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 passes unanimously. We have one more. Is there a motion concerning a redevelopment agreement?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance approving a redevelopment agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Gold Coast Exotic Imports, LLC as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Before we take a vote, just as a recap, in case you're watching from home and wondering what in the world is going on, that these guys aren't talking about all these motions. If you look at our agenda tonight, there are links to the details on our website, items B, C, D, E, and F. We are on F right now. All are related. They're all interrelated. They have to do with a redevelopment agreement, a redevelopment project on Ogden Avenue with Gold Coast Imports. Some might know that as the Bentley dealership on Ogden Avenue. There's some work and some improvements being done there, and we're rezoning some things and helping facilitate those improvements. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Item 8 on our agenda is the first reading. This is the portion of the meeting where we discuss subjects that we do not plan on taking action on tonight. These are subjects talked about for sometimes the first time, sometimes the second, third, or fourth. Tonight, we have at least one first reading item, and I'll turn it over to Village Manager Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. You're correct. It's just one item on tonight's first reading agenda. It's an ordinance authorizing a special use for the property located at 902 Maple Avenue. The project here is the request to construct a 3-story, 5-unit multifamily building. If thinking this sounds familiar, it's because the council did consider this project just a couple weeks ago. The council and the public had questions and comments, and the petitioner has taken note of those questions and comments and actually has proposed some revisions to their petition. I'd like to introduce the petitioner tonight to walk us through those changes and address the council directly.
Please come on up.
Good evening. My name is Al Damascus. I'm the attorney for Aaron Holdings, the owner of 902 Maple. I wanted to just say first that appreciate your consideration and that of the public, and I believe all of you are here for this, and I'm available for discussion afterwards for as long as you want, and I believe we've taken input from people here and want to proceed. So first, just a real short recap. This particular proposal has no relief from any of the Downers Grove requirements. We're not seeking any variances at all. Zoning, we're well under the maximum allowed downtown transition bulk requirements. There's no zoning, building, or engineering variances required or requested. No lot density relief is also being requested. Here, as you can see, one of the concerns that was raised by residents was the scale of the building and of the project. And so what we did is we prepared this exhibit, which shows the height is actually very consistent with what's in the residential to the east. In fact, in the front area, it's 32.7 feet, which is under actually the residential, to the east. And on along Washington, it goes up to 36 feet, which is allowed in the downtown residential. Downtown transition. As you can see, what is to the west is 70 feet high, and we are about half of the size of that. I recognize that there have been concerns in the community, especially with the developments that have taken place to the west, of possibly a domino effect, that here we've crossed the street, and then somehow with this, that somehow this will affect the residential communities to the east. First, all the residential communities to the east are zoned solely residential. This is the last property in the downtown transitional. It would require a major, major change, and it's not something that my client has any interest. They're simply looking to build this, which is where Gytis Arnauskas is looking to live in one of the third floor condominiums. Let me see if I get the next.
Yeah, to turn it around. Turn it the other way.
Turn it around? Okay, sorry. Okay. We were asked in terms of what kind of signage, and what I'm presenting tonight and what I presented in the papers I've submitted were absolutely welcome to have as conditions to any kind of special use approval. So the first is, the question is what kind of signage will we have? And the only signage, there will not be a monument sign, there will not be something blazed on the top. There's simply the numbers 902, which will be backlit to keep lighting down. And in fact, lighting, we've presented as part of our packet tonight the proposed lighting, and that there is no expected lighting above the first floor. In terms of the architectural, what we've done, the architect has provided more of a limestone base and windows, limestone surrounding, to soften the base of the building and add as common features on there are fairly common features on a lot of different residences. The overall design was really taken into account by looking at the downtown design guidelines and the downtown design transitional. In fact, if you look at the next to this right here, this is the Burlington Station, which is in the downtown residential, which is obviously a much bigger, project because it's in the downtown residential, so it's a lot different height-wise. But as you can see, it's got a lot of the same sort of architectural features, both in terms of materials, massing, solid and void, as well as roof delineation. Going back here, there are balconies only in the front on the south side. There were none put on any of the other sides, especially on the east side or on the north side, so that there wouldn't be any possible intrusions or whatever with neighbors. And then this is quite a distance from across the street. In terms of landscaping, let me just show you what we have here for landscaping. This is, we were asked to provide additional detail in terms of the landscaping. And we also, a question was asked, what if bushes or trees die, after they're planted? And so we're committed, and again, happy to have that as a special use condition, that the developer will take on responsibility for replacing bushes or trees within a 2-year period. And then there will be a condominium association associated with this building. And with that, the owners will take on that responsibility. You also see that in the area of the drive, it is a paver brick to make it more residential in features. And we also were asked in terms of garbage pickup, whether there was anything unusual with regard to garbage pickup for this particular property. We were advised by the garbage company that there is no change, and I actually submitted a draft invoice with our presentation. Questions were raised about construction, the length of construction, as well as parking of cars and trucks in relation to the construction. First, Aaron Holdings will comply with all of Downers Grove's construction requirements. Construction activity will actually be very similar to residential construction, with no heavy equipment, no big cranes, no precast or long street closures. Further, the foundation footprint leaves a lot of room on the subject property for on-site parking, as well as for construction deliveries, which was not the case for construction to the west, which went right up to the street. Construction equipment can be and will be parked on site. And as you can see, this is substantially smaller than anything over on the to the west of it. The proposal from demolition through occupancy permit is an estimated time of 8 months versus about the 18 months that was the time for the construction of much larger buildings to the west. There were questions raised about traffic. As you can see on this, we've left open as much as possible the sight lines from both Maple as well as Washington. And right now there are existing 3 curb cuts. And on this there will be only 1 curb cut, and that's as far east as possible away from that intersection. There were questions raised by Ms. Callahan, who lives to the north of the property, and I forwarded to her these drawings, and I've also indicated to her that one of the concerns she had was in terms of her foundation, for her particular building, and I asked that we have the opportunity to, if we're approved, that we have the opportunity to have a structural engineer to look at and to make sure that we would not disturb her foundation. Second, there was a concern about construction noise, and we will limit as much as possible anything to the north, and there's actually more of a setback with this proposed building than there is existing with the existing building that's on site. Another concern that was raised was with regard to preservation of tree near the property line. As you can see in that corner, which is the northwest corner, there's a tree right there. And we were looking to do both a fence as well as arborvitae and other trees and other landscaping. Concern that we have is with the fence in that particular location, it probably isn't that applicable for over further east, but it may be for that tree that's in the center as well as in the corner, whether a fence would affect tree roots. So I've addressed it to Ms. Callahan if we could, again, subject to approval, that we could work together to look to preserve those trees. I also forwarded the proposed plans to Tim McGinty, who's the attorney for the Ruth Matai Trust, which is the property owner of 854 Maple to the east. They saw the landscaping plan, and I asked them, I said, would you like to have, what would you like in terms of trees or landscaping as well as fencing? And they said they'd be fine with the trees and the landscaping, but they said if it was acceptable to us, that we would do both. And so we will do both, and again, we're fine to have that as a condition. I also asked whether Ms. Mathai objected to the proposed special use, and Mr. McGinty responded by email on May 2nd, you are free to represent that Ms. Mathai does not object to the application. I welcome your comments, questions, and I also welcome yours. You may not think that, but I welcome that, and also I'm available, as I said, as long as possible after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the audience, any council questions specific to what was just presented? We'll be going back around and talking some more after we hear from the residents.
And just thank you very much for your responsiveness to the neighbors' questions and concerns.
Thanks.
Okay, any comments from the audience on this petition?
Council, Mayor, Glenn Hoffman, Downers Grove resident for 7 years. So on March 4th, the Plan Commission had a meeting and they voted to deny the recommendation of approval for a special use permit at 902 Maple Avenue. Commissioner Boyle stated that there was not enough community outreach and that the design elements of the proposed structure should have been held to a higher standard regarding traditional design elements of the surrounding historical neighborhood. Commissioner Frankovic agreed with Commissioner Boyle's statements and emphasized meeting in the middle between the neighborhood and the development design elements. borrowing more from the historical elements of the surrounding neighborhood. Commissioner Dimitrizen was concerned about the negative effects of property values in the immediate area. This is regarding number 3 of the special use definition that states, quote, that the proposed use will not, in the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity, or to be injurious to property values or improvements in the vicinity, end quote. Commissioner Roche expressed that the proposal struggled to meet standards 2 and 3 of the special use definition. Just for everyone's general knowledge, standard 2 states, quote, that the proposed use at the proposed location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or a facility that is in the interest of public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare or of the community, of the neighborhood or the community, end quote. Given what we've heard over the past few months, I don't believe that we're contributing to the welfare of the community, but rather pandering to developers and tax revenue. That said, I'm not opposed to development, but I am a proponent of thoughtful development. None of these issues raised by the Plan Commission and regarding the special use definitions were addressed in the time that has elapsed since the March 4th meeting, with the exception of some small design elements that were pointed out by the Council of Aaron Holdings regarding some limestone softening, which said they were common to other elements in the area. Find me a limestone surround on a house on Maple Avenue and I'll buy you a cookie. Your Planning Commission may not be the governing body, but they are an advisory body to the council, and their vote to not recommend the approval of the special use permit should be considered. If we're not taking into account the expert opinions of the Plan Commission, then why do they exist? Your Plan Commission has a purpose to serve the community and the council. I implore this council to reflect on the recommendation of the Plan Commission and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Forrest. I've lived here for over 40 years. And I am having trouble understanding why 902 Maple is even on the agenda, let alone why you would vote yes on it based on the facts. Why would you ignore the fact that the Planning Commission voted against it? They said no. That should be the end of the story. Why have an advisory board if they're ignored? You will be disregarding the proclamation of Historical Preservation Month in May presented by Bob Barnett. Yet you still consider putting up a monstrosity. Why have a proclamation if it's ignored? You ignore the Historical District sign that sits directly across the street from where this eyesore will be built. Why put up Historical District signs if they're ignored? You will disregard the local community that undeniably doesn't agree with this building. As evident by the polling of the neighborhood, the posts on social media, and next door, overwhelmingly against it. Why do you sit on a village council to serve the people if they're ignored? Ignoring the continuous stream of people who have spoken out against this and the audience who have come out to show support for those speaking against the building. Why have public comment if it's ignored? You will be disregarding the fact that the new owner knowingly bought a property not zoned for this. The only right they have is to build a two-family home, period. Why have zoning rules if they are ignored? Ignoring the ill effects of the traffic, the history of the neighborhood, the congestion, the safety of the residents, and the devastating effects on my friend Katie Callahan's home next door. Why pretend to care about your neighbors you see at the grocery store when their concerns are ignored? All of the reasons to vote no are right in front of you. You just need to stop ignoring them.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Rich Cullivaney. I guess it's important to say how long I've lived in Downers Grove. So I've lived in Downers Grove for 58 years. I moved away 3 times. I moved back 3 times. Who knows if I'll move back another time. Anyway, I'm standing in opposition to this. The primary reason is the stated that the statements that Glenn Hoffman made. I won't repeat them. And also, I don't feel that this lines up with the downtown design guidelines. The downtown design guidelines were not done in haste. As a matter of fact, it was a total of a 4-year project, including myself and another person, going to places like Glen Ellen, Park Ridge, Wheaton, Barrington, talking to the planners in Elmhurst, and asking them about their downtown design guidelines, what they felt they did right, what they did wrong, and if they had to do it over again, that what would they put into those guidelines. They were very forthcoming, and then we just couldn't get that existing council for one reason or another to pass those guidelines, so I decided to run for council. And as you all know, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's a sacrifice in order to do that, but I felt it was important for the legacy and the future of Downers Grove. Now the challenge here is, what is a petitioner forced to do, and what should a petitioner do because it's the right thing to do? The petitioner does have the right to tear down a significant architectural building, even though there's only something like 59 out of some 14,000 structures in Downers Grove that were deemed to be of significance, and that's their choice. This government doesn't have the authority to say, no, you can't tear that down. We specifically decided in the Historic Preservation Ordinance that was revised in 2007 to make it voluntary and not have a third party. However, there's some things in life, and particularly when you're building a structure, that a petitioner should do because it's the right thing to do, not specifically because the government is forcing them to do that. And I'll give you a perfect example. Who remembers Mr. T? Right? In 1987, he went to his home in Lake Forest, didn't like the trees, so he cut down 100 of them. And it so incensed those people in Lake Forest that they actually developed a private property tree ordinance to protect the nature of that particular village and protect those trees. In this situation, one of the biggest problems I have is not something you can force because, as you know, we don't force architectural design or style on a petitioner, but the petitioner still could do the right thing. And the simple fact of the matter is this building doesn't fit in. You know, if this building was across from Burlington Station, it probably would look fine, but it's not. It's on a row of homes. Some have been there over, 150, 175 years. And I think that the petitioner should take it upon themselves, not because you're going to force them to do that, but to do the right thing and make these changes. It's also disconcerting to me, no offense to attorneys, because I know several. We have some sitting in this very room. It's disappointing to me that the petitioner couldn't face the neighbors. It kind of tells me that this particular person is not concerned with how the neighbors feel about that. Mike Davenport has designed a lot of houses, and I'm sure a lot of those houses fit into the neighborhood. I designed and built a house in 1990. Could have built it to any architectural standard I wanted, but I specifically built it so it fit into the neighborhood. And I think that's the essence here. If I were sitting up there, I'd be voting no for the reasons I've stated and for the reasons others have stated. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, I'm Ian Ogden. He took my ideas. So I figured I will speak from a different point of view. So we have a traffic problem in this town, and it's gotten worse with all the new developments we've gotten. And I think that we need to stop approving new things to be built, and we need to look at that as a major problem because, like, I mean, in the past few decades, Main Street has backed up. Even it's backed up, like, I don't know, like through back to Prairie or whatever, even up to like 55th Street. And I think that that's indicative of a major issue that we have, especially during rush hour. So I think that for that reason, we need to stop allowing new things to negatively impact traffic, and we need to start building things that are, or start looking at that and trying to figure out ways to alleviate it with different streets. I mean, we've got one-way streets, so that could probably be corrected, but yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council, fellow residents, and distinguished guests. My name is Forrest Moberg, and I've lived in this community for 30 years. I'm here to voice my deep concerns about the proposed construction project at 902 Maple Avenue and its numerous negative impacts on our neighborhood. I will address the applicant's response to the special use approval criteria and provide additional context to illustrate why this project is not sustainable for our community. Firstly, while it's true that the downtown transitional zoning district allows for an apartment condo building as special use, we must consider the broader impact on our community. The proposed 3-story, 5-unit building may technically fit with the zoning parameters, but it fails to respect the character and integrity of our historic district. This development would introduce a scale and density that are inconsistent with the surrounding single-family homes, disrupting the harmony and charm that define Downers Grove. The applicant claims that the development will enhance the character of downtown and provide modern housing. However, the reality is that the proposed building size and design do not match the existing homes, creating a stark and unwelcome contrast. The existing parcel was originally zoned for residential housing until legal maneuvers changed it to business use and now to downtown transition. This history shows a pattern of disregarding the community's preferences and well-being. The petitioner asserts that the project will not be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare, yet we have already experienced significant disruptions from similar developments. Heavy equipment like bobcats have been turning around in our driveways, leaving mud and rocks. Large trucks idle outside our homes, blocking driveways and creating noise pollution. These issues are not mere inconveniences, they severely impact our quality of life and mental health. Moreover, the intersection near the proposed site is already one of the busiest in town, with over 8,000 cars passing through daily. Adding more residents and construction traffic will exacerbate safety concerns, especially for our children. This development does not align with the interests of our community's general welfare or safety. Regarding the project's alignment with the comprehensive plan, it is important to note that while the plan supports pedestrian-oriented, high-quality architecture and transit-oriented development, the proposed building does not appropriately buffer the nearby residential areas. The development size and density are not in keeping with the more modest single-family homes that dominate the area. This lack of compatibility undermines the plan's intent to provide a smooth transition between different zones. The applicant also highlights the economic benefits, suggesting that the new building will improve property values. However, residents of Downers Grove who understand and cherish the unique character of our community are united in opposition to the project. The adverse impacts on our daily lives and the disruption of our neighborhood's historic charm far outweigh any potential economic benefits. Furthermore, the proposed development will require extensive construction, adding to the years of ongoing building activity that we have already endured. This continuous disruption forces residents to keep their windows shut during the summer, detracting from our enjoyment of our homes and neighborhoods. In conclusion, I urge the council to reconsider the approval of this project. The proposed development is not just a building, it represents a significant and negative shift in the character, safety, and livability of our neighborhood. We deserve to have our voices heard and our concerns addressed with the seriousness they warrant. Please stand with us, your community, and vote against this proposed construction so we can still enjoy a sunrise.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Selma Moberg. I live at 844 Maple. I have been a member of this community for 30 plus years. I'd like to point out 3 specific comments tonight, which I did not see, something that I wanted to bring up. It is not currently in this, which was a 63-page report. So on page 8 of 63, the report comments about neighboring properties to the north and the east. The proposed plans were provided to Tim McGinty, the attorney for the Ruth Matai Trust, which is the property owner of 854 Maple to the east. I inquired whether Ms. Matai objected to the proposal special use. Mr. Ginty responded by email on May 2nd, 2024 as follows. You are free to represent that Ms. Matai does not object to the application. Ms. Matai was not aware of the signs on her property. 2 signs objecting to Aaron Holdings' proposal were placed on Ms. Matai's property. Ms. Matai requested landscaping and fencing. Both will be provided by Aaron Holdings. What I want to comment is Ruth is my neighbor. I asked her if she would be okay to put signs opposing this, building. She was fine with it. She actually came by my house to donate money for the production of the signs. My son happened to be home that day and was a witness to this. So somebody here is clearly lying. I would like to go on to comment about the special use criteria. And I specifically want to point out question number 3. It reads that the proposed use will not, in particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or be injurious to property values of the improvements of the vicinity. It will most certainly affect our property values. The response by the developer reads, the proposed 5-unit condominium building will not have a negative impact on the health, safety, or general welfare of the general vicinity. The development will contribute to the general welfare of the community by demolishing an existing and deteriorating house and garage and provide new, modern, and upscale housing units to provide housing options for residents who desire to work or enjoy the amenities of the downtown, therefore, or thereby having a high probability of improving the property via the vicinity. With 8,000 drivers going through that corner per day, per the village stats, I can't imagine how this won't be a negative impact on safety. I did want to bring up a comment, a final bullet point, that it was mentioned last week in the meeting. I'm not sure specifically, it was somebody over here who brought up the downtown traffic study, which was done in the winter of COVID. And I think it was Leslie that commented, this is not a good comparison. I just came through the Curtis today. I could not get through on Curtis because there was a delivery truck backing up into delivering their products to the restaurant. So I decided to shoot up south on Main. We have delivery trucks, we have Amazon Prime, we have UPS, we have FedEx, we have so much congestion in town. It's almost, I don't go near town because it's so impossible to get through. I implore this council to work with the recommendation of the Planning Commission. I want it to be on the record, I oppose the approval of a special use permit for 902 Maple. And I can say that if anything good has come from this, it's meeting amazing people and working with amazing people that have brought up just great comments and have equal values in the construction and maintaining the integrity of our historic homes. So I can't be grateful enough to be meeting such fine people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Clorna Greco, and I've been an owner of a business in town for 38 years. Oh, sorry, employee for 38 years, and about 26 as an owner. I just want to ask you before I put my comments, are these going to be purchased, or are they going to be apartment-type rental?
Ms. Greco, would you do me a favor and
Oh, I'm sorry.
ask up here? We'll get those kinds of things
that's
answered.
my question.
Okay, we will get that answered, for
Oh,
sure.
okay. All right.
It probably seems...
Well, he
ro-
said there was an HOA, so that's usually only with,
Yeah, we'll get it answered and we'll clarify. The reason I'm doing this is because two reasons. One is we want to make sure that it all gets recorded.
Okay.
And the second thing is that there's people watching at home. So if he answers you from a seat over there, the people at home don't necessarily hear. So we'll get that clarified.
I didn't want to comment incorrectly because I was just wondering if they were going to get a tax write-off for the property tax if this was going to be apartments.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure Dash has the tax write-off, the TIF, and I'm pretty sure Maple and Maine also has that. But the Marquee, I don't think they got any tax break because those were condos and they were sold. I also want to know, is there going to be parking for visitors on their property? Because there's no parking on Maple, and there's only 5 spots on Washington for that whole section. So when I was looking at the drawings, it doesn't look like that anyone can park behind the cars by the garages and then kind of get out the way it's made like a V. So I'm not sure. And I'm not sure how the garbage trucks, are they going to have garbage cans that they're going to bring to the street? Or is the garbage truck going to have to try and back into that driveway and then, or pull in and then have to back out onto Maple, which is going to be very hard. It's so close to the corner where the stop sign is when the Amazon truck pulls up there. Now when they were offices in there, they would pull up onto that curved driveway. There isn't a through street, so they're going to have to back up. They can't get out onto Washington when they're exiting. So that's my concern. And also, where are the construction trucks going to be parked? Because construction during this new city hall, all the construction trucks and workers were over into the parking garage, taking up spots on the first floor, and now they've moved over here, but that is another one of my concern. That whole Maple is a concrete jungle. I don't think any of us want to live in a concrete jungle, otherwise we'd be living in the city of Chicago. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Katie Callahan, 5211 Maple. I am the neighbor to the north side of the proposed development. I do not concede to the special use, the petition for 902 Maple. I object to this building and challenge it as a 5-unit multifamily over the 2-unit allowance. But for the record, the developer's attorney did contact me, as he mentioned. So if this building were to pass, I just want to address that I would like a fence at my property line in addition to arborvitae tree landscaping. There was also a question about a commitment for a structural engineer that RN Holdings was going to inspect or pay for the cost for the inspection of the property and the foundation, which I actually have hired a structural engineer to inspect my property and my foundation. So the date of the inspection will be scheduled on my calendar if there is something that passes here. But I appreciate that RN Holdings would like to pay the costs. And as a first-time homeowner within 10 feet of the property line for the proposed special use of 902 Maple, I do ask that you vote against it for a 5-unit multifamily, or for it to go through it all. As it was just spoken about, the traffic is bad, and the delivery trucks, the mail trucks, the FedEx, the Prime, all those things, they're blocking driveways at the units across the street. They're blocking driveways to the businesses that are to the north of me. It's a really tight area, and more traffic and more trucks and things like that is probably not ideal. I also don't believe that it serves any purpose to the community. I don't see any use of it for me or for my neighbor friends. And this is my home, and this is my community, so I just don't see how it would benefit us. But those are just the thoughts that I had for tonight, so thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ed Briner, resident of Downers Grove since 1953. Please put me on the record and my family and others who oppose the approval of the special use permit for historic 902 Maple Avenue. I grew up on Saratoga between Franklin and Prairie in the Prince Pond area. This is another DG, rather historic area, many Victorian homes, and beautiful brick streets. I've seen Downers Grove, thank you folks up there, do many good things over the years to improve our village. But now, and sadly, a lot of not so good things. For example, paving over so many of our historic brick streets around the Saratoga and Prince Pond area, demolition of a number of historic homes along Maple Avenue, historic Maple Avenue, demolition of Longfellow School building and what's replaced that historic building, and not blending the new and the old, especially on historic Maple Avenue, i.e. the Dash building and others lining Washington to Main Street. And now, the possible demolition of 902 Maple falls into this category of not so good. Ironic that this meeting and discussion is taking place here in May, the month that Mayor Barnett has proclaimed Downers Grove Historic Preservation Month. In conclusion, and if approved, DG loses 902 Maple, another historic home. Traffic increases. The intersection at Washington and Maple is already a nightmare. Accidents waiting to happen. And will only get worse if this condo project is approved. Parking will add to the ever-increasing problem of where do I park in Downers Grove. So Mayor and Council, please keep the residents of Downers Grove, especially those who reside on Maple Avenue, first and foremost as you make your decision on the 902 Maple project. Thank you.
Any others on this agenda item?
Good evening, John Miller. I live on Blodgett Avenue here in Downers Grove. Thank you all for listening. I've been on public boards before, and I know there's a lot of listening, and I understand that a lot of the comments make it sound like you guys have already voted. I understand that's not true. It's more frustration. So don't take offense if people make it sound like it's a done deal. We're appealing to you to follow the Plan Commission's recommendation. There was some good conversation there. There was good reason why it's not done. Go back and think of why we have all these community meetings. I've said it before, I sat in the same room with Mayor Betty Cheever when the Lakota group was first put together and we first started the whole downtown redevelopment. And every time I sit in one of these meetings, and there's, a month ago, we're over across the street at another community meeting, and the same thing gets said over and over again. How do you make the transition? Most people agree there's development. There's always been development. There's been development since the first settlers came here, for crying out loud. But it needs to fit. Your own guidelines for downtown talk about the transition between the downtown and the existing neighborhoods. And yet, every time we get a picture shown, it's from the downtown perspective. That picture that was shown across the street from the church with the dash on the left and and the mini dash on the right, which is 902 here, is the wrong perspective. The perspective that we're trying to protect here is to the east and to the south. Let's go down Washington. Let's all take a field trip right now. You show me a design characteristic in this building that's on Washington south. Same thing, let's go east. Yeah, I get it. There's design characteristics that fit in with Burlington Station. Irrelevant, not even in the same district. All right? Not next to an established residential neighborhood. So everything we do to try to justify this, and staff is doing the same thing, you're backing into how do we justify it to the standards. We had a number of people point out it doesn't actually meet the standards. What are those standards? The design guidelines are clear. And I get it, there's some things that are enforceable and some things are not. But the very fact that we're calling this a special use gives the village a lot of leeway here. I've gone around with a couple staff at Village here about leeway on ordinances and stuff, and the village has a lot of leeway. This is a special use. It doesn't meet the intent of the guidelines, which very specifically, and I have to repeat it again, say that you should be respecting the majority of the characteristics, the architectural characteristics of the existing residential neighborhoods that it's transitioning to. So we should never, ever again talk about how this compares to a building downtown or across the street. That's like saying, hey, compared to an aircraft carrier, a battleship's much smaller. Well, hell, I don't want a battleship next to me any more than I want an aircraft carrier. So let's compare it to a fishing boat, okay? Whatever analogy you want to use. We kind of ignored the parking. A few people have brought it up. But did anybody else notice in the staff report that the village's staff recommendation is, well, they can just park on the street. Just call the village or go online and get a permit and just park on the street all night long. Oh, that's the solution? If nothing else comes out of this, you all need to address the on-site parking. You cannot have 5 units and tell me nobody's ever going to visit them. That's not realistic. They're going to park in the parking garage. Great. Then why is the village's recommendation, oh, just call the village or just go on the village's website and get an overnight parking pass for 7 days? So each resident gets an overnight parking pass for 7 days? So the people that live on Lyman got to have cars parked in their front because they went and got a permit to park their car? I don't know if anybody, am I the only person that saw that? That's just a slap in the face to the residents to say something like that. So I urge you to look very carefully at the guidelines. What do you want this to be? There's better ways to design a building there. I get it, something's going to go there, but it needs to look like the east and the south. That is the residential neighborhood we're transitioning into. And that's what we're here appealing to you all for. Like I said, well, we sound a little angry. We are angry. Because many of us that have lived here for a long time see each one saying, oh, it's going to hold to a high standard, and it doesn't. We see traffic studies that say, oh, this will have a minimum. It's a transit-oriented. Anybody want to go try to find a parking spot on Washington and Maple right now? I bet you there isn't one. And parking ordinances aren't. I put a rock, I took a picture of it, I'll show you all, by a car when I walked by one day, just by the tire. Because I go, hey, this car seems like it's been parked here forever. 4 days in a row, that rock was right at the same point on the tire that I took the picture of. It must be one damn good parker to always get the stem of the tire right next to the rock that I put down there. So when we say, oh, you can park here, park there, well, we already know the ordinances aren't enforced. So I'm probably close to my time, so I'll just wrap it up and just appeal to you all. We're all residents here. You have guidelines. You spent literally millions of dollars on consultants to get the public's opinion. The public's opinion has been steadfast for 20 years plus, since the late 90s, that we want the transition to the existing older neighborhoods to be reflected in the architectural style. I know it's objective, but there's no objective to this one. That doesn't look anything like anything in the area you should be looking at. Thank you.
Hello, Christine Martin. So I am here tonight to oppose the construction of the condo of 902 Maple. But I would like to start with that it is Preservation Month. May is Preservation Month, and preservation is not about the past. Preservation is about the future. And I am co-chair of Friends of the Edwards House. We have been an organization since 2014. We came together to oppose the demolition of the Edwards House, which was on Maple Avenue where the marquee is. It was quite a battle, and we learned a lot. There were a lot of residents that came together, and we are called Friends of the Edwards House because we became friends and we're still together. So we're a 501c3, and we have landmarked close to 30 homes in Downers Grove since we began, and we're proud of that. We still do a calendar. Before COVID, we did home tours, we do the farmers market. We're active, and I love our group. I'm proud of our group. We have members here that have been in Edwards House as well. That said, there have been, so my question is to Downers Grove. I'm not asking this rudely, I'm asking it seriously. What does Downers Grove preserve? What do you preserve? So many things get torn down, and big, massive structures go up. And so I live on Maple Avenue, and Maple Avenue it's not an official historic district, but it is a district. It is a historic unofficial district, but the signs are there. And it is one of the original thoroughfares, from what I understand, of Downers Grove. Our house was built in 1895. We worked really hard on that house to put it back together. It was a quote-unquote tear down. I don't care for that word, but it was, and we put it back together. It's so doable. Talk about not throwing things in a landfill. You know, you'd save a home. There's a lot of bricks on that gorgeous home. And that home, even though its office is at 902 right now, that is a stunning space inside. Just the staircase alone is very unique, and it's beautiful. So we're not even battling and asking to save the house, because we know that's a moot point. Sadly, a moot point. So I also want to cite, it was brought up tonight, that the residents recently, there have been issues. For instance, Longfellow. People really battled for that. They wanted to be heard. The Main Street, here where Main Street backs up to Highland, all the houses were torn down, and and there's going to be a big structure put up. Those neighbors begged you, don't do this. Please don't do this. This is our property value. These are our lives. We love these homes. This is our home. And you're coming and you're taking our property value away. And one woman, so badly, she said, we bought this home to raise our children and to make our life here. And now we're going to have all these people looking down into our yard on our children. You know, and again, they felt unheard. Also, this is a little not architectural, but people along Maple said, please do not put that structure up the cell tower. I look out my window every morning, there it is staring at me every time I open my eyes. Straight out my bedroom window, there's that cell tower that they just keep adding and adding and adding. The residents asked you repeatedly. They even got an attorney and said, please don't do that. Downers Grove's huge. It could have gone somewhere else where it did not affect people's property values, their homes. So I was asked very briefly to read something, because there are a lot of people, Longfellow, that will not even come to these meetings because they say that the situation was so bad and they felt so kicked in the gut by, forgive me, council, that they won't even come and petition here to save this house. This is the quote. They disenfranchise residents one block neighborhood at a time. They may think residents are content, happy, but residents realize no matter what they do or say, council will not listen. So they say, why bother? it is a done deal, and if they are upset by that statement, then they can demonstrate otherwise tonight and when they vote next week on this issue. Lastly, I'm not 100% sure on this, but my understanding was that there was a resident that wanted to purchase that building and turn it into an office, so it would have preserved the building, and apparently that was turned down. So I can't speak on that, but it was discussed. So I guess in closure, I ask council to put the residents who have lived here, some people have grown up here their whole life, put them first before you put the developers and the tax revenue first. Because too many residents stand here or they fill this space and say, this is our livelihood, it's our life, it's our everyday. Please don't do this to us in our homes, in our life. You hear it way too much. I'm referring to all of you. You hear it time and time again, and each time we're told, we're voting yes anyway. Too bad, we don't care what you think. And it's old, and it's disheartening, and that's it. And I do have a last question. Just, again, the rumor mill's always floating out there. I was wondering, because the blacksmith shop, the corner of Maple and Main, is there any proposal or anything in queue at all that might be harming the blacksmith shop? Really one of the only last, preserved, or it's not preserved, but it's there on the corner, and that is a really, really expensive corner, I realize, that you could build on. And so is there anything out there right now that the blacksmith shop is in jeopardy? That's my question.
You'd have to ask the owner of the blacksmith shop. We haven't seen anything, but
Okay, so,
Keep going.
because again, like, this started in 2023.
Keep going,
so,
Christine.
Yeah, so we don't know. So nothing right now. There's no plans through the village, nothing?
we'll come
For-
back and clarify that.
You'll come back and clarify that.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Others?
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Council. I'm Maureen Callahan. I am a lifelong resident of Downers Grove, and I'm happy about that. And I think probably you are too. I'm very, very proud of this town. Anytime I go on vacation, I'm always happy to say I'm from Downers Grove. And it's a special place. And I think you must know that, he wouldn't be sitting here. And I'm coming to you this evening, a couple of things really. So as I said, I'm a lifelong resident, but I'm about an 8-year resident now in the Maple Avenue understood historic corridor. And so I live down the street from this proposed development of 902 Maple. And I'm looking at it as a mom with 3 small children. And I walk my children every day to the school at Maple and Washington, Downers Grove Christian. And every day, it's kind of a game of chicken or Frogger or something to get across that street. I'm raising my children now. As I said, they're 3 small children, and I'm raising them now. Always make eye contact and wait for the driver to wave you on. Always, always, always. You wouldn't believe how long we wait to stand there for that. It's mind-boggling. Just yesterday, my husband witnessed my daughter's kindergarten teacher with her 3 small children crossing north on Washington, crossing over Maple and Washington, north on Washington, to the dash building where I think you know that that's the school parking lot. I'm not kidding when I tell you 4 or 5 inches and they'd have been dead. She was already in the crosswalk, someone making a left. People just don't, I don't know if they don't care or they don't, I don't know what it is, I'm not sure, but I can tell you that corner is stressed. It's stressed. There's a lot on it already. It's not going to get better with this development. And I just ask you, Downers Grove, it's a walking community. I mean, it can be anyway. I'm proud of that. You go out to Palos or places like that, it's so weird to me. They don't have sidewalks. And I'm like, this is terrible. I love walking. And I love to meet people along the way, you know, and it's something we're used to, and it's something we love, and we're not alone. I know there's a lot of people that like to walk in this town, and that corner is just a dangerous one. And I also, you know, as far as 902 Maple goes, that's my sister's home that is one door north on Washington. She's an excellent human and a single girl who has worked her whole life to finally buy a home. I've been in contact with people who I know we're going to have, you know, a structural engineer come in for a professional opinion, but I just know personally landscapers who have said, basically, this is going to ruin your home. It's an old house she has. It's going to be so close to that property, the new building's proposed property. I just ask you to consider these things. She's another lifelong resident of Downers Grove. It's just, we've always been here. We like this town. We love it here. But I feel like some people get listened to and some don't. And I just want to, I mean, I don't even know where to go further from this. Just please consider these things. These are your residents. We really do love it here. But please consider us. And that's all. Thank you.
Anyone else on this subject? We will, of course, be meeting at least one more time. And certainly, we're available via email as well. We'll move to the council now. Council comments or questions on this development? Martin? Oh, I'm sorry, Mike?
I'll kick us off.
Okay, go ahead.
So, a few things. One, I have some things, I've done my studying and some comments to make. But in response to some of the comments that have been made here tonight, I spent 16 years on our, what was now our Historic Preservation and Design Commission. It breaks my heart that, you know, we see things like this happen. We in this town decided to put in place an historic preservation ordinance that's voluntary. I would be willing to bet that this council, if the current homeowner at 902 Maple were to come forward and want to landmark that home, my guess is that we would certainly approve that, right? But we cannot landmark it. It's not within our purview to save that home because it's historical. And that's because of the way our historic preservation ordinance is crafted. And if that's something that people want to revisit, you certainly could. Another thing, you know, that street would be wonderful if it was designated a historic preservation district. And the folks that live on that street have the ability to do that, and that would have impacted this as well. Maybe this property should have been zoned residential and left as an R4 or something. But it was downtown business. It was changed to downtown transition. There was lots of conversation about that through comprehensive planning and other ways over the years. And so we have what we have, and the people who own that property have the rights to develop it in a way that's allowed for the downtown transition district. So I just wanted to share that, and I suspect that my fellow commissioners here also look at this as an historic home that they wish was not getting torn down, but it's out of our purview. And secondly, what's being proposed is less impactful, less dense, if you will, than what could have been proposed. So, once again, if you thinking about that, if not this, then what? I mean, we have to be careful, right? If this ends up not going forward, it could be something even bigger and bolder. And it doesn't have to be residential, right? It could be some other commercial use, which would bring with it a whole bunch of traffic issues as well, maybe more impactful than what's being proposed. So I wanted to share some of that. With regards to the special use and all the zoning concerns that come with it, I think that it's substantially been complied with, except for the building, the design guidelines for downtown. this project does not conform to the design guidelines, and for several reasons, which I'll go over in detail. First and foremost, site design and building massing. And we talk about, so the apparent, this is from page 13, item 3B. The apparent mass and bulk of a large building should be reduced by structural articulation. So structural articulation means, and this is defined in here, can include breaking the plane of the building by offsets, insets for entryways or balconies, step backs, and consideration of alternative roof constructions. This building pretty much ignores what's going on Washington Street. This project has two fronts. It has two facades. And it was interesting in the presentation tonight, it was even talked about as the Maple Street side being the front, right? When in fact this building has two fronts, and so going along with that, Washington Street needs more articulation, and the fact that this has two fronts is because it's a corner lot, right? So when we look at particularly, this is on page 16, item 4A, building design guideline for building facades, and I'm going to read this verbatim. Item number 3, and keep in mind, we only have so many corner lots in the downtown transition district. So this was written specifically for conditions like we're talking about here this evening. Corner buildings are exposed on two streets. As such, corners of these buildings should be articulated and elaborated for their importance, and there's some examples shown. But keep in mind, it says the corners of the buildings, right, should be articulated and elaborated for their importance, and rightly so. If I'm an architect, if I were designing this building, I mean, that's one of the unique and exciting things about this lot, is the fact that it has great exposure, that it's in a way an entry point coming into the downtown, and there are building design guidelines, and I give great credit to previous commissioners who were gave input on this and worked so hard on this. This is really thoughtful and forward thinking, and this is why this is here. So that's, for me, that's the biggest issue, is that the corner isn't really addressed in this appropriately. As well, item number 4, maintain the appearance of buildings with residential character through small-scale development with entry porches, landscape front yards, dormers, small windows, or pitched roofs. I think we heard this from some of our residents this evening, and its lack of attention to that, those residences to the east and to the south. And something else I wanted to point out, page 14, item 3C, site design, site landscaping, transitional district. This is the one page in the design guidelines that really was written just for the DT district, right? And there's a few things in here that are of concern, but I guess the biggest I would say is, you look at there's a picture in the bottom left-hand corner. It says encouraged outdoor seating area near residential units and uses, and it shows a nice wraparound porch, which coincidentally, I mean, that's kind of why we all love wraparound porches, because they sit on these corner lots, and you're fronting on two streets, and it's something that actually brings some structural articulation to that architecture, and helps to celebrate that corner. It's responsive to it. But part of it is understanding, as you look down the street, you see front porches, you see people sitting out. I visited with a neighbor just the other night, sitting on the porch looking at this property. I mean, it's the feel of the street, right? So that's what we're missing here in this design. Other issues, maybe not as significant, but still important. The building top, right? So the design guidelines speak very specific to that on pages 31 and 32, items 7 and 7A. And the building top should be an expression of form, ornament, and detail as it meets the sky. The roof should give distinction to the entire building. To create an attractive roof, certain design features can be used to create good storefronts. And it's interesting because the the picture that we highlighted there is a corner lot with a structural corner articulation, and the fact that that corner cornice, quote, extends the building closer to the sky and creates corner articulation. So, so some additional attention to the top of this building needs to be cared for here. And item 7A, on sheet 32, 7A, item 3, when utilized, attached residential should provide distinctive cornices on flat roof buildings. So this was speaking directly to what's being proposed. So honestly, I feel architecturally that there was a lot of really great and terrific guidance in our design guidelines, and unfortunately, what we're seeing right now hasn't really responded well to that. In terms of the floor planning and some of that, my guess is that these things could be fixed without a substantial redesign, if you will, of the plan itself. But you know, the outside appearance of this building is really lacking, and I think the design guidelines do a great job of articulating why that is. And you know, this is a great guideline. I wish I could say that I was intimately familiar with it prior to joining the council. I was not, even though I'm an architect here in town. Don't do a whole lot of commercial multifamily things, and don't do a whole lot downtown. It's mostly residential additions, remodels, and some new construction. So I was really impressed as I went through this, and it's a great guide, and I think we need to follow it as closely as we can. And if we do, I think great architecture is going to come out of it. I'm sorry that the house potentially cannot be saved unless the owner wants to save it. But hopefully, if we get something back in its place, it could be something that for the most part, we feel is responsive to the neighborhood, responsive to these terrific design guidelines. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? Leslie?
I do want to echo Commissioner Davenport on the points about historic preservation and the change to this downtown transition zoning, so I don't want to repeat that, but echo those comments. There are some things that I just want to clear up when we're in here, is that technically throughout the village, no multifamily building over 2 separate households is technically zoned for anywhere. So it will always be a special use regardless of where it is in the village. So I just want that to be clear. I empathize with the fact that the Plan Commission voted against this. And a big part of why is because they wanted the developer and the residents to have a little bit more back and forth and have some improvements be made. They did not like it in its existing form. So that being said, I do appreciate the developer's attempt to try to make some of these improvements. So, you know, knowing that this is not going to be the largest size it could be, none of the visible lighting, no balconies overseeing people's yards, that was actually a concern at the Main Street building, which I did not vote for the Main Street building. I think I'm the only one up here now. It was just Commissioner Wallace and I that did not vote for that because it was incredibly intrusive in the neighboring properties. And from that perspective, they were asking for a couple variances that I just was not in agreement with. So it is not always the case that every single one of us up here is going to vote on behalf of a development. But what we have to look at is, on the whole, with all of these items and looking at the way that the developer has responded to the residents, do we think that they're making a good faith effort to make improvements to make it less intrusive for the neighbors? In this case, I do think that we're moving in that direction. I can understand Commissioner Davenport's concern with the corner. That was one thing that I had written down, is that, you know, I did open up the design guidelines, and knowing that it is exposed on 2 streets, I will say that Washington side is not, you know, particularly as visually pleasing as it is on the Maple side. I'm not sure if that could just be adding some sort of a first floor porch or, having some sort of a space to make it a little bit more visually appealing. So that is the one concern that I can understand. But I don't necessarily agree that some of these other conditions are not met. I do think that they made an effort with some of the porches, the landscaping, the additional green space, and that is part of what is delineated here in the downtown transition area to say that it is starting to blend more with the residential neighborhoods. And again, knowing that it is smaller and less dense than it needs to be, there are, it's not just overnight parking spaces, to be clear. People can also park in the parking garage, which I know everybody rolls their eyes at, but overnight there is typically space on the parking garage. And I do actually frequent the corner of Washington and Maple with my vehicle frequently, and usually don't have too tough of a time parking, but it also depends on the days and the times in which I'm there. So, it's anecdotal, and so I'm not a traffic count official on that note. But I would like to see a little bit of an improvement on that corner with Commissioner, in line with what Commissioner Davenport said. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that these design guidelines are meant to cover most of it, but not necessarily line by line follow all of them. For me, it's really important to balance the fact that I can see and empathize with the fact that this is another big development in the same area, and that's a lot of change and disruption for people. And I don't want to minimize that when we're making this decision, or minimize what impact that is going to have on people's lives. My goal is that when we get developments like this that come up here that are trying to make some good faith efforts to make improvements, that we are consistent and we work with folks so that when people come into the village, they know what to expect from the council. That it's not going to be a council that's going to say, you know what, I just don't like that. I don't think it looks great. We're not going to approve it. I don't think that's a way that people want their village to do business. But I also can understand why folks are upset right now and don't want to minimize that. So for me, I would like to see that improvement in the corner. But overall, I am appreciative of some of these changes and the improvements that we've seen, and hope that if this moves forward, that we would include all of that in this. So that's all I have to have now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I am certain I'm going to say things that are going to make people both happy and upset with me. So just everybody prepared to be equally both pleased and disappointed. Because this is a unique spot. The more I've thought about this, it's pretty much a Venn diagram. You don't see, I can't think of any other places where you have an overlap of downtown transition and a historic, honorary historic district. I'll come back to that in a moment. So it's pretty unique, and that's going to be important in some of my thinking. So first of all, a little history, and I am going to repeat some things Commissioner Davenport said, but because I was sitting up here at the time, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And first, just to dispel a few things, we have no obligation to agree with the Plan Commission and often don't. Plan Commission, like our other boards and commissions, are recommending boards. We take very seriously what they say. They provide a very valuable function of getting public input, synthesizing it. Oftentimes things happen at the Plan Commission meeting or after the Plan Commission meeting. They're very important and useful in focusing what comes to the Village Council. But ultimately the buck stops here. And you can go back and probably see many, many times when the Village Council, this one and many prior Village Councils, have disagreed with the Plan Commission. So there's just to set that record straight. And believe me, there's some times that I bet you folks will be glad that we disagreed with the Plan Commission, and there are times that they're glad we did agree with the Plan Commission, as long as we do something different. And maybe by the time we're done with this, we might do something different. So this particular parcel, as Commissioner Davenport mentioned, is currently downtown transition, but that was by design. It previously had a zoning classification that would have allowed for something more intrusive, or more intense, I should say, not intrusive, than what it currently does now. But with a significant amount of conversation, both up here and with the neighborhood, was significantly reduced to ensure that future development would be more smoothly transitioned into the neighborhood. And I know there's folks probably in this room that remember that discussion years ago, because there was a concern that what's across the street to the west would end up on the east side of the street. And so this was significantly revised to make sure that that wouldn't happen and there would be a better transition to the neighborhood. So it's no surprise what this parcel allows. It's been there for years, and anybody who has been paying attention would know that, and anybody who purchased it would know this is what is and isn't allowed in this parcel. And again, there was a lot of input from the neighborhood and the community with respect to the zoning classification that it has today. It's also been the case for many, many, many years that the comprehensive plan of the Village of Downers Grove specifically says that there are going to be pursuit of more dense and more pedestrian, transit-oriented developments in the downtown. So the fact that these are coming up in various parts of the community have basically been laid out in the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan for many, many years. Yet when things come up, it's like, I didn't realize that was happening, but it's been part of the plan. It's by design, quite frankly. This building has been mentioned, does fit the bulk requirements, including height, setback, density, and parking of the zoning ordinance, as is set forth in the report. In some cases, it's actually less intensive, and if I'm not mistaken, ultimately maybe a little bit shorter than the residential buildings across the street. So just keep that in mind. There are no exceptions or variations are being sought here, and the other thing that I just have to point out is that all property owners have a right to utilize their properties and develop them to their highest and best use consistent with what the zoning ordinances allow. I'm sure there are many people in this audience that would like to build a house or do something with their property, and they wouldn't want their neighbors telling them what they can and can't do. I also appreciate that the petitioner has made changes to the proposed project in an attempt to address the neighborhood concerns. So with all that said, and actually there's one more thing I want to say, historic preservation, when the historic preservation ordinance was first passed in 2007, there was an opportunity to landmark a lot of different homes. From 2007 until about 2015, only 2 people did. Best way to save a house that you think is really important to the community is to landmark it. And the only people who can do that are the owners. So people need to actually take steps to preserve buildings that they really want to. And we have had a program in place since 2007 to do that. It's been expanded and made easier since 2015. Since 2015, with the work of a number of groups, Downers Grove Historical Society, Friends of the Edwards House, and the Village Council, there's now 30-some properties that have been landmarked and are protected. So I would first and foremost put out an advertisement for landmarking of homes if you really want to protect them. The other thing I will mention is when 2007 and 2015, the original historic preservation ordinance and the amended historic preservation ordinance were discussed, there was conversation about thematic historic districts and historic districts. So Maple Avenue was top of the list as a designated historically significant corridor in the Village of Downers Grove for obvious reasons. You can look up the 2013 Architectural Historical Survey that identifies Maple Avenue is very important historic contribution to our community, but we got a lot of pushback about the idea of a thematic district or a historic district in Maple Avenue. The neighborhood didn't want it. Had we had one, Commissioner Davenport is absolutely right, we would not be having this conversation. So I'm not trying to scold people, but I'm just mentioning that we, the neighbors, can take steps to guide our own future. So I just had to say that because I remember when we talked about it in the past, there were a lot of people saying, I don't want that in my neighborhood. Well, this is why you have thematic districts, this is why you have historic districts in the community, and I'll say again, the ordinance still exists for that to happen. But it is voluntary because we're trying not to impose the government's will on the people, but instead allowing them to facilitate their own desires of preserving their neighborhood. So just keep that in mind. So, like I said, I'm gonna upset just about everybody in my comments. The historic district signs, by the way, are put there by the Downers Grove Historical Society. It's not been designated, as I just mentioned, as a thematic district or a historic district by the village because we haven't been asked to do that. The property owners in the neighborhood need to do it. So let's go to the standards. A lot of the standards have been read, but not all the standards have been read. So the key thing is the approval criteria for special use is section 2812.050H. It says that no special use may be recommended for approval or approved unless the respective review or decision-making body, that would be us now, determines that the proposed special use is consistent with and in substantial compliance with all village council policies and plans, including but not limited to the comprehensive plan, and the downtown design guidelines, which Commissioner Davenport spoke to extensively. And the applicant has presented evidence to support each of the following conclusions. I think they've all been read. The third one, I want to emphasize a couple words in it, because the third point is that the proposed use will not, in the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity, or be injurious to property values or improvements in the vicinity. Now, there's another part of the ordinance that is important with respect to special uses, and that's 28-12-050G3, which says that basically the village council, in granting a special use, can put conditions or restrictions on the property benefited by the special use to reduce or minimize the effect of the special use upon other properties in the area, and to better carry out the public's interest and the interest of the zoning ordinance. So that just, it's not an up and down necessarily decision. There's another option, which is if the village council thinks that some more should be done, we have the ability to remand this back to the Plan Commission with specific directions on what we would like them to do. My concerns here, despite the fact that this property was zoned the way it was for a reason and that the bulk requirements are met, I am currently not convinced that all the requirements have been met. I won't repeat what Commissioner Davenport said, but I've had the benefit of a conversation with Commissioner Davenport about this, and I am impacted by the points that you made, and am going to take those to heart. But the other piece is the historic preservation piece of this. No, we're not preserving this building. We can't preserve this building. The owners of the building are the only people who can do that. Just like everybody in this audience, you're the only ones that can preserve your own homes. But it is no question that 902 Maple is a significant contributor to the historic Maple Avenue corridor. And my concern is that it's the design elements, the design guideline elements, but it's also the fact that we have basically a gateway, and this Venn diagram that I talked about earlier, of downtown transition and what, for all but being formalized, is a historic corridor. And I think that means something. So while you can't change the building, you can do something about what replaces it. And should it fit more closely with the historic nature of the rest of the block? Some would say there's homes on Maple Avenue that aren't historic. That's true. But there are quite a few that are. And it certainly has, and has been recognized by independent parties as potentially qualifying as a historic district. That also weighs heavily on me, in addition to the points that you made, Commissioner Davenport, is that what conditions or restrictions which we're allowed to do as the Village Council under the special use approval criteria could be pursued in order to have this building, and again, not necessarily affecting the bulk or the density setbacks, but making it both more aligned with the downtown design, with the design guidelines, but also the historic nature, in some respects, the uniquely historic nature of where this property sits. I'm interested in pursuing that. I haven't thought of what instructions we might suggest giving to the Plan Commission if it were to be remanded. I'm not necessarily suggesting that I'm asking for it to be remanded. We don't have to. In fact, oftentimes the Village Council will just put those restrictions and conditions together, and then that's part of the special use. Often in consultation and discussion with the petitioner. We're not obviously going to leave the petitioner out of this. But I would be interested in further pursuing some of those options before this comes to a vote. I only raise the remand as an option. Again, it's rarely done because usually the Village Council just sort of gets to it and does it rather than remanding it, and then now you've got the Plan Commission that has to figure out what we meant. It's oftentimes easier just to say, here's what we mean, let's just do it. But I just wanted to raise that is another element of this. And the reason, again, to me, why this is different than a lot of other places, if not all places, is sort of that unique situation, Venn diagram between downtown transition and probably one of the most historically significant places in the entire village. That, I'm hard pressed to find another place like that. So that's all I have at the moment, Mayor. We're not voting on this tonight, so more to come.
Thank you, Martin. Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is a great example of why when this first came up, I said, nothing is a done deal. I think when I first got this, and this first came across, I looked at this as simply, build within its, the building is within the specs that we expect. The only reason it's special use is because it's a multi-unit residential building. We're not providing any exceptions, no variations. Strictly speaking, from an ordinance perspective, nothing about this building requires any special consideration. And in fact, I think the developer has been accommodating to the many asks that we've had so far. And I think it's already been pointed out, but they've exceeded some of the expectations as it pertains to heights and setbacks. So I don't love all of the charges of, we're in the pockets of developers and just doing what they want. We've asked some things, and I feel like the response has been very, very positive. I am also feel very strongly that this council should not be the arbiter of style. And I think that is an important thing when we think about the downtown design guidelines, that they are not style guidelines, they're design guidelines. However, I do have some concerns, as Commissioner Davenport has pointed out to us, and as it pertains to whether or not these meet those guidelines. The first point I have is just a question around, there's a paragraph that refers to the downtown transition district guidelines in the very first part of the guidelines, but I don't think the word guidelines is being used properly. I think what it means is the downtown transition zoning. So we may want to talk about changing that, because I think that's added to some of the confusion. The paragraph reads, the downtown transition district guidelines are intended to accommodate and promote transitional land uses and so on. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about zoning. So that may have led to some confusion. But in reviewing the guidelines, and candidly, there's not a whole lot specific to transition. This is all, I suppose, under the downtown umbrella. And despite Commissioner Tully thinking that I would be upset, I agreed with actually almost everything you said. I think this is a unique spot, and I do think it takes an extra eye, but only in the context of what I think is our parameters. Again, I am not interested in using the special use to wield style or to wield opinion. It's very important to me that we stay within the parameters of what the ordinances dictate. But that part of the ordinance does include this downtown design guideline meeting these guidelines. So I agree. I do not think the corner is met. I don't think that restriction or that parameter is met. I also have a concern about a dark color, which I know sounds completely contradictory what we said, but it's in our guidelines, so I have to go by this. The phrase reads, dark colors typical building colors include natural brick, stone, shades of red, buff, white, cream, and gray. Dark colors are also appropriate when variations in the color palette are used. Mike, maybe you can explain to me what that means. I'm not exactly sure. But the image that is used that is pointed out as discouraged is an image of the Nando's building, which is a dark and very light brick building, which looks almost identical to the color palette of what's being proposed. So I'm not sure how those two match. And then I also thought the point of the roof, it talks about cornices. I don't see anything special being done with the roof. So all of that having been said, I am a bit torn here, because I do feel we have to respect the rights of the property owner in developing what they're allowed to develop based on the ordinances as they stand. However, because the design guidelines were put in place as a condition, we have to hold those as standards as well. And I have issues with what has been, with what I've mentioned on these guidelines. I have no idea how to address them. That's not my job. But I do think they are concerns, and given the fact that I have not talked to Commissioner Davenport or Tully, but given the fact that we have similar thoughts. I feel like it's important enough to take a relook at this. Because based on what I'm seeing, I don't think it meets the guidelines either. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Dan, you got anything?
Yeah, I was very much in the same boat as Commissioner Gilmartin. At first pass, I thought that this met all the conditions and that this was a fit for the downtown transition. But thankfully, we got the pro Commissioner Davenport over here, and also some of the things that have been brought up from the public. I think that if we could work with this developer to make some of the changes as discussed, especially like the corner facing Washington, I think that would be huge. Having toured this property on 3 separate occasions prior to its selling, I don't think there was a feasible opportunity for it to be anything else but a multifamily building. I don't think there was an opportunity to save it, to make it, commercial or office use. And I think that this, as Commissioner Davenport alluded to, like this hopefully is the least intrusive on the surrounding neighborhood versus what could be developed there. So with that, I hope the developer will continue to work with us and work with the neighbors and improve it in something that we can all accept.
Thank you. All right, I'll add here, I'll try not to totally duplicate what my colleagues have said, but I want to add a little finer point, I think, and underscore a few things. Special use, so to clarify something, this property is zoned for this use. It's a special use, but it's not zoned for something that doesn't allow this. This is a permitted use in the zoning classification. But back in April 9th, when we first talked about this, I specifically asked, and I'll say it again, Mr. Demansky, I'm not picking on you, but I hate the fact your clients aren't here. I hate the fact their architect's not here.
My client's here.
Oh, well, it'd be great to talk. Well, then listen. Well, at the April 9th meeting, with all due respect, I asked to hear from you, the owners, and they weren't available. So I'm glad you're here tonight. So, okay, well, it was the minutes are pretty clear, guys. I was looking for input from the owners of the building. So if it chose not to, then that's fine. I'm glad you're here tonight. At that April 9th meeting, when I was wanting to talk about this, a couple things I specifically talked about were the top of the building and the massing of the building and how those were issues for me. The special use allowance does allow us a little more, to use a term that was used earlier, leeway. And what we do is we look to our documents that we have. As Commissioner Tully pointed out, we look to comprehensive planning documents, we look to design documents, we look to future land use maps, we look to zoning. All of those are pieces of how we get to an answer. It has nothing to do with deferring to developers or being in the pocket of builders or any of that kind of nonsense. There's a series of documents developed over a long period of time. But those talk pretty specifically to some of these issues. And the downtown transition and the design guidelines, which we've decided are appropriately applicable to this parcel, they are intended to help prevent intensive downtown development from encroaching into stable residential areas. When you go in and look, I take a little different viewpoint about accommodating and being helpful. There are some things which probably benefit the owners as well when it talks about things like screening. But the idea that there's been material changes made that affect the massing or that affect the integration with the neighborhood, I just don't think are true. We had a few limestone adjustments. Commissioner Davenport mentioned the corner, and that's certainly true. But if we look a little deeper into these same design guidelines, maintain the appearance of buildings with residential character through small-scale development with entry porches, landscaped front yards, dormers, small windows, and pitched roofs. What does that apply to? Facades. There's none of that on Washington Avenue. None. Washington Avenue looks like an afterthought. And yet, it's arguably as important as Maple Avenue. People are coming into our downtown Downers Grove and they're seeing this building on the corner. As Commissioner Davenport pointed out, that corner is important, but so is this idea that a facade, and it's in here on purpose, is going to have some of these elements. I'm not sitting here feeling like I'm at a point where I feel like the design guidelines as it relates to being part of the special use criteria have been, there's been an honest effort made at meeting them, frankly. Commissioner Gilmartin pointed out that color issue. I get, the farther we get into style, the less interested I am in trying to regulate, but these ideas about landscaped front yards, dormers, small windows, pitch roofs, those are not style. Those are features on a building, and they can be incorporated in just about any style. But incorporating them is important because what it does is it starts to soften that transition, and the whole point of the transition district was to be a softening into the residential areas. So I think there's a lot about this development that is obviously spot on. The fact that there isn't any particular relief being asked for is clearly important, clearly shows that folks spent some time with these documents. There's no question about that. But it is a special use, and it does allow us to try and work to ameliorate some of the effects on the areas in which the use is being used. And I think we've missed it. I don't think we've got there yet. That is not to say that this can't be done. I believe it can. But I think it's going to take a lot more work, at least from this 1/7 of this conversation. Any other comments from the council?
Mayor, I would
Chris, please.
I just want to make sure on the record that the color comment that I made was not my opinion on whether I like the color scheme or not. In fact, I'm trying to stay away from that. It was simply that it was demonstrated in the guidelines, and it looks very similar to what's being proposed. And in the guidelines, that was tagged as discouraged. So,
You know, Commissioner Davenport made a good point. These design guidelines, whether they should be 100% mandatory or they should be guidelines, whether they're perfect or not, they are pretty good, and there's a lot of direction in them. And in this case, as a special use, we think that it's appropriate that these design guidelines be adhered to closer than less, I guess is probably the best way to put it, and they're pretty straightforward. So I'd encourage a lot more adherence to them. Anyone else? We will have more conversation about this for sure. I think everybody up here is probably hoping that there's some progress made and that the thing continues. I know that some of the audience are not thrilled with the idea that there be a development here, but I won't repeat my colleagues. Clearly that is permissible, and our authority is in fact limited. So that within those constraints, I think everybody's hoping we make some progress. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council and everyone here, thanks for the comments. We obviously need to regroup, and we will do that. We think we've gone good ways, and I think we can see if there's another further way we could go. And as I said, I'm available here to discuss, and then I will review with our client, and we will also work with your staff to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a great wrap-up. Staff will continue to work with the petitioner to implement the direction from the council we heard tonight. Encourage the members of the public who are interested in this to follow our meeting agenda, as it is unclear at this time whether it'll move to another first reading or an active agenda. So please continue to watch, and we encourage public participation in all these processes. And with that, that concludes our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a manager's report tonight, Dave?
No manager's report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Attorney's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Only one item, and that is an ordinance authorizing a special use at 902 Maple to permit the construction of a 3-story multi-family building. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 11 is the mayor's report. I do not have a report this evening, so we'll jump right into council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in the community, other organizations that they're partnering with or working with that they think that people should know what's going on. We'll start with Commissioner Davenport.
No report, and except I'll defer the Rotary Grove Fest update to my colleague on the other end. So, thank you, Mayor.
Danny.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Leslie.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Chris.
oh, I had such a
See
good
what I
one
did
if you
there?
called him first. I'll save it for next time. I do have something.
And you know there'll be a next time.
Yeah, there will definitely be a next time. On May 18th, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as you may know. You may be seeing all the green ribbons tied around the trees around town. On May 18th, I asked you to join Grit 2 which is a local organization that focuses on mental health awareness and issues for teens. They are having a mental health provider fair at the Farmers Market. It's located just across the street in the Cadence Outdoor Dining Area. That's May 18th. That starts at 9 and ends at 12. And also, the same day in Fishel Park, there will be free yoga from 9 to 12. So I hope you will all come out and participate in the fair and the yoga. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to congratulate Hope's Front Door on a very successful Hands of Hope luncheon today, and want to thank all the members of the community that came out to support Hope's Front Door, which is really a terrific local not-for-profit that serves those in need and helps to put them on a path for success in their life. So I want to thank all those who attended, and Commissioner Davenport for joining. I'm sorry the rest of you couldn't make it, but I know in spirit you were there and you support the mission of the organization, so I appreciate that. And then before I say what you're all expecting me to say, I have to mention a little bit about the tradition, because it didn't start with me. The countdown to Rotary Grove Fest actually started back when it was Heritage Festival, when the village ran the festival many years ago. And by memory, it was former Commissioner Mike Gilbert that started the tradition of the countdown. And when he left the council, somebody had to pick it up, so it was me. And then I kept it going for a long time, and then I left the council for 4 years at least. Commissioner Wallace picked up the torch and did the countdown, and other people have done it from time to time, but it's really been a long, proud tradition, almost like the opening of Saturday Night Live, but not quite. So it's more like the closing of village council meetings. You have to say, yes, I'm glad you asked. There are only 37 days left until Rotary Grove Fest. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all and good night.